Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Montessori Family Alliance webcast. I'm glad to be back. This is Lorna McGrath, your host, and I welcome all of you that are listening in today. If this is your first time listening in, you can go to, if you have any questions or comments, you can go to the section on your control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, click on the little triangle for questions, and you can type something in, or if you just want to comment on anything, we're happy to have you do that. Today's broadcast is going to be about, let's see if we can go to the next slide. Let's see, here we go. It's going to be about why should we screen toddlers? And maybe it should be why should we or shouldn't we screen toddlers? In Montessori, we try really hard not to compare children to each other, to allow them to grow at their natural rate. And, there can be certainly a lot of debate about whether or not we should be screening children. So I thought maybe it was a topic that we might all want to take a look at today. So let's get going on this and see what I have to say about it. And you can join in or just look at my thoughts and see if you agree or not. So here we go. So the first thing I wanted to do today was just think about, okay, so what's the difference between screening and a diagnostic evaluation? Because there is a true difference between the two. Screening is just, it's a set of activities in the case of really little children that pretty much anybody can administer. A teacher can, a parent can, any other person that works with children can, as long as they are trained in the particular type of screening that's going to be done. A screening is usually used to track developmental progress. It's not used to diagnose anything, and certainly Montessori teachers and administrators are not generally diagnosticians. They're not necessarily a speech pathologist. They're not necessarily a psychologist. So screenings are really just to take a look at a child and see how they're doing developmentally. And it can be administered by, a lay person, if you will. Whereas a diagnostic evaluation is really something that we would not even recommend until after a child had already, been screened. Already we had been talking to the parents. Already we would have been having a few red flags going up and trying different things. And so a diagnostic evaluation is a much more in-depth type of evaluation, and it's usually administered by a trained, certified psychologist, therapist, counselor of some sort. So that would be a different type of certification, and there are diagnostic tools that, a lay person like me, for example, would not be allowed to even buy that type of evaluative tool because I don't have the proper credentials to administer it. A diagnostic evaluation is used to diagnose, obviously, a learning disability, a behavioral condition, if they're on the spectrum, if they, if people are thinking they're have different other kinds of issues going on that are far beyond what we normally can work with in a classroom. And so there's a real difference there. And what I'm suggesting is that I actually think certain kinds of screenings can be really helpful in a Montessori environment. So let's go on. And so let's talk about that. So why would I screen children? Well, first of all, I think it's really good if you can get a type of screening that can be done over a period of time. For example, 2 or 3 years. Sort of like our work cycles that we have. We always do a 3-year classroom, you know, and so a screening would be good if it can be done over a number of years, because what we know is that not all children grow and develop at the same pace or at the same time. So we want to have something, a tool that would work in a Montessori environment and that would speak to that kind of issue for us about, you know, really allowing the child to develop at their own pace. So I would screen children if I could find a tool that had a longer period of time and could be done several times during that period of time if necessary. And that we'll talk about a little bit later on. I also say, okay, so why screen? Another reason I would screen is it adds validity to teacher observations. So much of what we do in Montessori is observation, and that is our greatest tool. That is the key to Montessori classrooms. That's what makes us different than other kinds of classes. We are looking at each individual child and we're saying, okay, let's really pay attention here. Let's not just record keep, you know, and know what materials they're using. Yes, we do need to know that, but let's really look a little deeper. Let's look at the child and how they interact with other children. Let's look at the child and see how they problem solve, or do they problem solve. Let's look at the child and see if they can concentrate for any length of time, and are they progressing in that particular thing. So we observe and we write down our observations, but often parents don't observe the same things that we do, and sometimes they really question our observations. And so a screening can really help to, you know, validate what the teacher is noticing in the classroom. And so that's a reason for it. And, you know, certainly in this day and time, whether we like it or not, you know, parents really want to see some kind of, I hate to use the T word, you know, a test score, because everybody, you know, focuses on that. Hopefully the parents in your environments and the parents that are listening to this are not so hooked into that, but many people are. And so this is, you know, this is a formal type of screening that has paperwork, that has, you know, some kind of a graph that shows them the scores and shows the teacher the scores too. And it also helps the teacher to validate their own observations. And then the third thing I have here is we would screen little ones to help parents understand their child's development. That would be another reason that we would screen, is so that parents could begin to see, oh, these are some of the things that would be typical. And again, leaving room for variation for individuality. So, with all those good reasons to screen, why wouldn't we screen children at the toddler level and the 3 to 6 level? Well, I think one reason is because sometimes screenings label children too soon. You know, we, again, don't give them enough time to grow naturally the way they normally would grow. And, you know, we lose sight of all of that. So we want to not do it too soon and label children. On the other hand, we do see things, and we know that early intervention is really important. So we have to find the balance. A really good book that I have read this summer, I always have a great summer read, and this my book for this summer is The Importance of Being Little, What Preschoolers Really Need from Grown-ups. And you have that as a resource at the end of this session, and there should be a handout. If you go to your control panel, the next to last section has the PDF handout with the resources on it. And we'll also post those on the website so that you'll have those. But she really talks about, Erica really talks about labeling children too soon. You know, where's the balance? You know, we don't want to just let things go, and then when they're in 4th grade, we go, oh boy, we really should have taken a closer look at this child a lot sooner so that we could have helped them out. And yet, we don't want to do it so soon that they haven't had a chance to really grow and mature and function in a way that is natural for them. So we have to be careful about that. Another reason we need to be careful about screening is we don't want to push children too soon. You know, if we're comparing children to other children, the tendency is to want them to catch up, you know, to be the same as these other children. And again, in Montessori, we know that there's going to be variation. There are going to be children who learn things at 2.5, other children who will learn the same thing at 3, and other children who will learn the same thing at 3.5. We know that that happens, and so we don't want to push children because it causes anxiety for their parents, it causes anxiety for their teachers, and most importantly, it causes anxiety for little children. You know, they are who they are, and they're doing what they can do, and we want to give them the time and the environment and the support to show us their development without necessarily labeling them. Some people want little children to be screened to measure their intelligence or to see how intelligent they are. And I really have to say that, first of all, screenings don't measure intelligence. That would be a diagnostic evaluation type thing, which I'm not advocating. And we know that IQ is not set until, you know, intelligence is not set until, you know, into the elementary years. So if anyone did an IQ test on a very young child, it really probably wouldn't be valid anyway, because the child has not grown and has not had enough years to develop their full intelligence. And then the last reason I think that we don't want to screen, we might not want to screen children, is we don't want to compare them to others. And I think I've more or less gone over that with you for this earlier during this session. So let's go on and let's take a look. Over the years, I have done screenings on all of our toddlers who are moving up into the 3 to 6 group, and I have done screenings on all new children who are coming into a primary classroom. So they might be 3 years old and brand new to our school. They might be 4, they might be 5. And I do a screening on them when they come in. So I'll have that baseline that I'm talking about right there. It really does help if there are things that come up over the period of time that we're kind of questioning. If we've done a baseline screening, then within 6 months, which I think is in one of these a little later on, within 6 months, we can do the screening again. Like if a teacher comes to me and says to me, you know, Lorna, I know you screened Johnny when he was younger, and we're just finding some things that we're a little concerned about, and they'll tell me what those are, and they ask me, would you do another screening and let's take a look and see how he's progressing. So it's good to have that baseline score. And first step screening is an actual copyrighted screening, and it's developmental screening for young children. I have found it to be a great screening tool for us, and we'll look at a little bit more about it in detail in just a minute. So I have that also in the resources section for you. Anyone can administer this screening. They need to have a little bit of training, maybe from somebody who already knows how to do this screening, or they can just read the manual and do it. I think it's always nice if you have someone else that you can watch. Like if I'm training some people at Newgate now to do the first step screening, and it's nice for them to be able to just sit in the room when I'm screening a child and, you know, just watch me and see how I work with the child and how the different activities go. Secondly, I want to talk to you about what the first step screening looks at. In this particular screening, we look at cognitive skills, we look at language development, and we look at fine and gross motor development. Cognitive means we're trying to take a peek at how does this child think? Do they see patterns? Can they problem solve? Things like that are not necessarily, you know, can they count to 10? On the other hand, that might be in there. But it might be more like things like, let's see, if I make some groups of pennies, and I have 3 groups, one with 1 penny, one group with maybe 3 pennies, and another group with maybe 6 pennies, and I put them on the table, I might say to the child, you know, which group has the most pennies? And then they would answer or point, And then I might say, which group has less pennies than, and I might point to the group of three, then this group. A child, would either point to the group of pennies that just has 1 penny, or they'd point to the group of pennies that has 6 pennies. Obviously, I'm saying less than, so it should be the group with 1 penny. So these are the kinds of little activities that might be in this cognitive area of the screening. And all of it is little fun activities that we do together. And I enjoy working with children, and I think you really have to have somebody who enjoys working with children doing the screening, but also someone who understands that you don't give the answers because you enjoy it and you like it. I actually did a screening one time at a child's home when we were in the process of creating a school and we didn't have a school yet. And so I actually did the screening at the child's home. And the dad was there, and he didn't sit in on the whole thing, but he happened to walk by when I was in the language part of the first step screening. And one of the activities in the language section was asking the child, can you think of a word that rhymes with hat? Can you think of a word that rhymes with ball? Can you think of a word that rhymes with, I don't know, something else? Well, the child didn't do well on that. The child couldn't think of a word that rhymed with hat and was looking at me a little bit puzzled. And so we went on to the next one, and it was rhymes with ball. And the child still was, puzzled and couldn't think of any words that rhyme with ball. So after the screening was done, and the dad didn't interrupt, by the way, and I have to give him credit for that. He didn't interrupt, but afterwards, when I was getting ready to go, he said to me, Lorna, why didn't you tell her, that you wanted her to think of a word that sounds like hat, or, give her some other way of thinking about it. And, I had to say to him that I'm not there to teach her the meaning of rhymes with. I'm there to ask that question using rhymes with, not changing it, and seeing if she has ever really heard rhymes with. Does she have that understanding of what rhymes with means? And it's okay if she doesn't. It's just one of the things we're looking at as we screen this child in the language area. And maybe when she's 4 or 5, she will actually know rhymes with, and it won't be that she couldn't have thought of it at 3. It's just she hadn't connected rhyming with sounds like. And that was more the point of the exercise. And but he was a little annoyed with me because he said, I know she knows words that rhyme with hat. She does it all the time. And I said, I'm sure she does. But that wasn't the point of that particular exercise. So, I would have liked to have changed it and allowed this little girl to, get that answer right. But so you can enjoy it and you can have fun with it, but you can't give the right answers when you're a screener. And the next area that we look at, so language is one of the areas, and I do a lot of little exercises with listening for sounds in words, and that's at the beginning of the language section. There's another section in the language area that checks to see if a child can switch from one thing to another thing. So, for example, I might say, how high can you count? And that's a tricky one, by the way, because some of them want to count to 100, and I don't have enough time for them to count to 100. Anyways, how high can you count? And then the next question might be, what kinds of animals can you think of? And then the next one might be, what's your favorite color? So it's changing the questions up, and the questions have nothing to do with each other. So it's seeing if they can switch gears and think about something else and process that language and say to themselves, oh, okay, first I was counting, now I'm thinking about animals, now I'm thinking about colors, because that's an important step in the language area. It's about processing and so forth. And then another one will be, we will work together on finishing up a sentence. So I might say to the child, a mommy is big, a baby is, and then I let the child fill in the blank. Or I might say, you put your food on your plate, you put your juice in your And again, leave it blank and let the child fill in cup or glass or, whatever they were going to fill in. And let's see, another one is the finish up game. There's a pattern one. There's a book that goes with this screening. And in the book, the child looks at pictures, like let's say a picture of a long sleeve shirt, okay? And on one side of the picture, the sleeve is there, the long sleeve. And on the other side of the picture, so let's say the right side, the sleeve's there. On the left side, there's no sleeve. And so I circle that picture and I say, what's missing here? Can you show me or tell me what's missing? And so the child has to look at the picture and recognize that, oh, the sleeve's missing. So there are lots of different, kind of fun little activities that go along with this in the language area of it. And motor development, fine motor, there's an exercise holding a pencil. They just draw a straight line from one point to another point. Then there's sort of a maze that they need to be able to hold their pencil and go through without touching the sides of the maze. And there's bead stringing and tying a knot. And, most children that I screen, of course, can do bead stringing, but many, until they get a little bit older, at 3 they can do bead stringing. At 3 they might not be able to tie a knot. And I show them, by the way, I give them a demonstration of how to tie a knot. I do it very slowly and carefully, as we Montessorians always do. Then I allow the child to have their turn to try to tie the knot. For gross motor, we have a string. And I have a string and the child has a string, and they're different lengths because I'm bigger and the child is smaller. And I just take the string and put it around the front of my stomach, and I've got my hands on both ends of it, and I put my hands behind my back. And I tell them, put that string around your stomach and touch your hands in the back, holding onto the string. That one, if you're 3, you're going to get it. However, there are other things that we do with the string, like I hold my string up, standing up, hold the string up, and I say to the child, now I'm not going to let I hold it like a jump rope, okay, one end in each hand. I'm not going to let my string touch the floor. Watch this. And so then I step over 1 foot at a time without letting the string touch the floor. So then the child has a turn. And then the last thing on the string would be the tying the knot, because that's the hardest one of all. And then for gross motor, we do some balancing things, so they have to balance with their eyes closed and putting their feet in certain positions. We also do a hopping exercise with some yellow tiles that I put down on the floor in different patterns, and I show them how to hop, on a certain pattern, and then they have to do it. So it does involve all 3 of those areas, cognitive, language, and motor development, and I like that because it gives us a nice picture of what the child can and cannot do. I will tell you that first step screening, there are several different scorecards that you use, and the activities change a little bit. There are more activities the older the child gets, and the activities also become more difficult the older the child gets. So that's the beauty of it, because you can start at 3 and you can still screen a child at 5.5. They say on this first step screening that you can screen a child as young as 2 years, 9 months old. But I usually don't do that. I've tried it, and most of them, it doesn't really give us a good score. So I usually wait until they're 3 years old. And then it also has on the chart for the results and the screening record that you keep, it says you can go up to 6 years, 6 months old. And I have found, especially with kids in a Montessori school, it seems that once they're past 5.5, man, they just zip through that thing. They don't even have to think about, what I'm asking them to do or how I'm asking them to do it. So I usually don't give it to children that are over 5.5 years old. So that's something you'll want to know about that particular screening. I've already said that this first step screening involves a series of fun activities with the screener and the child. Oh, the other nice part about first step screening is it takes 10 to 20 minutes to do the full screening, depending on the age of the child. If it's a 3-year-old, it's not going to take very long because there's not as many activities. And even some of the activities that are there for the 3-year-old, they won't be able to do. And in certain sections, like if you do the first one, I show it to them and it's sort of a learning one. And then you do the second activity, and they should be, from the first one, they should be able to do the second one. If they can't, then that section is done. Even if there's a third item in that section, you're done with that section. So it doesn't take very long if they're really young and have less activities and may not be able to do as many of them. Whereas with a 4.5 to 5-year-old, it might take up to 20 minutes. Sometimes I've even gone as much as 25 minutes because they're thinking and they're doing many more activities and going through most of the questions in each of the sections. But it's not a really long screening, so it's great in that sense. Next, a child can be rescreened in 6 months if needed. So again, if I screen a child at 3 years old and the teacher comes to me when the child is 3.5 or even 4 years old and says, you know, I've got a couple of little concerns, I wondered if we could rescreen, I do that. And the beauty, again, of this first step screening is that it's designed to be used with a range of ages. So you can compare the first results from 3 to the second results from 4 or 3.5 and see if they've progressed, if they've, you know, flatlined, or if they've actually regressed. So this is a nice, again, baseline for you. The results can be easily shared with parents. I like the way the result part of it is laid out on the screening form. It actually looks like a traffic light, I tell the parents. And it's because the graph has a green area on the top, a yellow area in the middle, and a red area at the bottom. And when I do the scoring, the child's score in, let's say, cognitive, language, motor, is going to fall in either the green, yellow, or red area. There are also some other forms that they have to fill out, that we all have to fill out. The teacher has a form that they fill out from what they've seen in the classroom, and that's part of the screening results, and I put that on the graph as well. The parents fill out 2 forms. One is sort of a self-help skills, practical life, if you will, and the parent fills that out, and I score it. They also fill out another one that is about how they interact with the parent, you know. Do they do what they're asked to do? Can they follow directions? Those kinds of things. And that's a score that goes on. So the teacher's score goes on, the parents' 2 scores that they fill out, and also I, as a screener, have one that I fill out as how the child interacted with me in a screening situation. So there's a lot in the results. And what I tell the parents is if your child scored in the green area at the top, it's as if you come to an intersection and the traffic light is green. You know everything is going fine, smooth sailing, just keep going right on through. If your child scores in the yellow section, that's like coming to a traffic light, the yellow light comes on, and it means slow down, wait a minute, pay attention. And I tell parents, you know, this area means that, you know, there's something going on maybe. Maybe the child is coming down with a cold on the day that I do the screening and doesn't feel great. Or maybe a new baby just came home from the hospital. Or maybe grandma just left. You know, it's something that's a temporary thing that probably is not going to show up the next time the child's screened because it's not a permanent type of thing. It's just a little blip. If I do tell them if your child scores in the red, then that's something that we really need to take a serious look at and maybe get some further evaluation done so that then the child can actually get some maybe diagnostic evaluation. You know, as I said before, that's not what this is about, but it's a step in that might be important for us to recognize that. This section, Ages and Stages, ASQ, this is a screening, a developmental screening that you can use or that can be used with children from birth to 6 years old. So again, it's nice because it's a multiple year screening. It has lots of good activities. I do not use it for 3 to 6 year olds because I have the first step screening and I like that better. It's not as complicated, and we don't have to invite the parent in to watch the screening or to give the screening. But with children under 3 years old, it's a really good tool for toddlers. If you have an infant class, it might be a really good tool for them as well. What is nice about this is this particular screening involves parent participation. In fact, I don't give this screening. I give the parent a little training before the child is in the room with us, and I help the parent, guide the parent go through the exercises, because the child that's so young, first of all, will respond better to their parent. They may be, a little shy around me or a little frightened. They don't know me. They may not respond as well. So it's nice because the parent is there and they respond usually really well to their parents. It's also really nice because the parents actually see how their child is doing while they're screening the child. They can't really say, well, my child knows how to do that, when right there in front of me and them, the child can't do whatever the activity is. So it sort of gives the parent a different eyes, a different set of eyes to see their child through. The screening administrator, which would be in this case me, I can schedule a time to talk with the parents about the results later on, and the parent has had that experience of helping to screen their own child while they were there. So I think it's a really good screening to use for children under 3 years old. And again, in the resources section, there's some information about that, and here it is. Here's that resource section that we were just talking about. It's got the first step screening. It tells you who they are. You can Google it, and you can buy that. Ages and Stages tells you who the lead developers were and gives you a website for that one so that you can take a look at that one as well. And then I wanted to give you the name of the book that I've been reading this summer, which is really great, The Importance of Being Little, What Preschoolers Really Need from Grown-Ups, by Erica I don't know how to say her name, Christakis. And, Erica is not a Montessorian. In fact, I haven't finished the book, but I'm more than halfway through. She has only mentioned the word Montessori once in the first half of the book. She mentioned the word Waldorf. She mentioned another type of child care or philosophy of child education, early childhood education. But she's not promoting any one particular brand of early childhood education. She's really just looking at little children and saying, what do they really need, and what is our society doing, and what are we doing as parents and teachers, and how can we make sure we're giving I don't really like the word preschoolers because it is school, but those children from birth to 6, what are we really giving them that supports their natural growth and their natural way of learning? So it's a great book if you want to get it and read it. I want to thank you all for joining us again today, and remind you that next week, Robin Howe, who is the Associate Head of School at Newgate School, is going to be our guest. He will be talking about realistic expectations for the new school year. I think it should be really interesting. Robin has lots of great insights, particularly for elementary and adolescent years in Montessori education. He also is an early childhood trained teacher, so he will be kind of covering the spectrum, although I think he'll probably concentrate more on older children. So join them for that next week. Oh, and by the way, I will still be away from the office, so Tim will be the host for that particular session. And then in 2 weeks, Dr. Delaney Rustin is going to be on with Tim again. Tim will be the host in that one as well. She has put together a documentary called Screenagers, and it's all about the ins and outs and little glitches with technology that we are coming up against as educators and parents. And so she's going to share with you how parents and educators can work with children to help them achieve a healthy amount of screen time, and maybe share some of the reasons why she's so concerned about this particular issue. So thanks again for joining us. I really enjoy our sessions together, and I hope you will be back again at another session. This will be recorded, and it will be put up on the website, the Montessori Family Alliance website, in about a week from now. Thanks, and bye now.